would you look at this? Here we are, Edge Hill Uni have done this for us, put us in this little studio space here. This is James Sutton. You can see him right next to me already. Hello, James. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm all right.
You didn't see this coming, did you? When I said, do you want to come and do the
show?
show?
No, I didn't dress for the occasion, although full face of makeup.
Because you come straight from work?
I've come straight from work. This is like, it's not a regular.
It's not the way you leave the house.
I didn't get home in the morning and think, shit, Anfield Wrap. Fix that. No, I genuinely thought we'd be in a little poker studio above a bar somewhere, like usual. That's
the way in which we normally do this.
This is very classy.
Isn't it just? It really is a touch of class. Lovely plush Moulin Rouge curtains behind us. We've got this here with the telly just to remind you it's the Anfield Wrap. James has already swore this is usual Anfield Wrap rules if you're watching it on the video. If you're not and you're just on the audio, well, it's just the audio and it's going to be exactly the same as normal. Nothing different, nothing changing. Also with me to my left, as I look, I have Gareth Roberts and John Gibbons joining us for this one today. And we'll start just as we always do with a little bit of an opening question on this one. And it's just because I think it contextualises the discussion. John Gibbons, what's your worst ever football shout? What's the worst thing you've ever said, either about a player, about Liverpool? Keep it Liverpool-centric.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot.
Have you got a solid career of bad shouts?
There's a lot. I mean, transfers, we've all done them because I think it's always worth pointing out that most of us have never actually seen a player as much as we often make out. So I thought Mario Balotelli would be brilliant for Liverpool, largely because he was a completely different player in my head than he was in actual real life. And so I wasn't just wrong about how good he'd be, I was wrong about what sort of forward he was. Because in my head, it was the goal against Italy, where he runs off the back, he barges the fella out the way and he smashes one into the net. I'm thinking, oh yeah, loads of that'd be good. But he just drops off all the time, doesn't he? And so I was watching, I was like, what's he doing? Why is he in midfield so much? You know what I mean? And that was the kind of player he was. Where in my head, he was, it's just this goal against Italy that I've got, that brilliant performance. And then so just sort of a few of those really on transfers. But in terms of actual watching a player and still managing to get it wrong, I remember. There's been a few youth ones that I thought were going to be absolutely brilliant. And I remember thinking, when we were actually away at Newcastle and we won 2-0, and it was Vignal and Risa on the left-hand side, and I thought, well, that's our left-hand side box for the next 10 years, isn't it? And that wasn't true.
Wasn't, no.
I mean, no spoilers. Didn't happen.
Gareth, what's yours?
Mine's a left-sided shout as well. I thought Emiliano Ensua was going to be the long-term answer to Liverpool's left-back problems that have gone back seemingly the whole time of being going the match. I just liked what I saw early doors with him. I thought he's going to be good, this lad, he's going to be boss. I'd seen him, I used to go to the odd reserve game in them days as well, which I don't do so much now and probably should. And I'd seen him play there as well, and I just thought, he's got it, this lad. And I was going around saying so, and I was writing it, and don't look it up now. I look silly now.
But a catalogue of this, is there?
Yeah, well, the point is, isn't it, that who's right about football and why does that even matter? And it's like, at the time he looked good and then he faded. I think he got played a bit too much, too young. He's gone on to have a decent enough career in football, I think, so maybe it wasn't the worst shout. I also thought, and maybe this is a slightly worse shout, I also thought that Spearham was going to be the man as well. I was like, I know he's small, but he's local-ish. He's going to be the steal in midfield, all that sort of thing. I obviously like that he put a tackle in, as I do ever. Yeah. Again, I'd watched him for the reserves, which I think is quite a dangerous game in a way, because you watch the reserves, don't you know, the under-21s these days, and you're going, he's boss, he's the man, and you go around, you tell all your mates in the pub.
Sometimes it's just the lad who's trying the hardest, isn't it? At the reserve level.
But then the Premier League's just obviously a completely different world, and they play there then, and you can end up looking a bit of a fool, but so what?
It's why Ojo's actually looked quite impressive in that you've seen the moments where it's looked like it's like a different game. Like a couple of times when he's just gone to sort of goes past someone and some big grok over 28-year-old fullback's gone, no, you're fine there, mate. You just stay away from me there. Yeah. I think you found this one belongs to me. But then every now and again, he's actually managed to show that he can make that step up and have that moment of class.
Yeah, I think it just shows with the Ojo thing that you've just got to give him a go, and that's something that a lot of youth coaches at Liverpool have said. They say, just give him a go and see how he does, because you don't know who's going to actually rise to the occasion. You don't know who, like Jay Spearing, it's just maybe a step too far, and you don't know until you give them a few games. And you can't just give all of them a few games, obviously, because there's games to win and things like that. But sometimes you just got to kind of throw them in and see how they do. Because with Jay Spearing, it's easy to forget how highly rated he was. Man United were trying to nick him at 17, 18. Ferguson was on the phone to him and that was when he was playing centre half. They were trying to steal him, and he was like, "Oh no, we want to stay at Liverpool." Ferguson's quite open about that, about how good he thought Jay Spearing. He said he thought he was the best young player in the country. It just doesn't happen.
See?
This is getting along. Well, my one is. I thought that I used to say to anyone who's asked, Steven Gerrard hasn't got the guy to play number 10. You know, Steven Gerrard can't play off the front.
How many people reminded you of that over the following?
So 2-3 years, loads, constant reminders that I used to just say. I just can't see what happens. Can't see how it goes for him. You know, he's either gonna come off the right and use his power or pace, but he just hasn't quite got that guile. And it transpired that he actually had everything.
How happy are you that he proved you wrong?
Oh, that's the thing. I was absolutely made up. You know, when he turns around and bangs in 25 goals in 41 games.
But he sort of reinvents the position, doesn't he?
He does.
In your defence.
Yeah.
In my defence, I think Kaka was sort of doing it before he did it, so I should probably have been on to it a bit more. Kaka played number. Yeah, I mean, he was so graceful, Kaka, but even he was 6'1" and he eased past people and just because he made it look graceful, you didn't think you could do it by bursting because Steven is not that graceful a mover.
It happens everywhere though, doesn't it? It's not just us, it's not just Liverpool fans. I mean, like one of my running jokes, I've known an Evertonian all my life, and my running joke with him is I start listing all the players that he said were going to be boss for them. You know, Barlow, you know,
Bakayoko.
The list just goes on forever. It's brilliant. Michael Branch, you know what I mean? And you go through this huge list, Billy Kenny, whatever.
Jose Baxter.
And he's just...
I think he could be the winner.
It does remind me, did you see, this is a brilliant one for this, did you see that over the weekend it was circulating the Daily Mail, or I think it was, or the Express, one of those papers, did 2007 said this is going to be the team at the 2016 World Cup. This will be the England team, and it was only in 07. So it was, you know, they've only got 10 years.
Someone dug it out.
Someone dug it out.
Brilliant.
It's unreal.
I've seen it. It's ridiculous.
There's lads you've never even heard of, isn't there? You're like, who's he? Bobby Threlfall from Liverpool's playing left back in the 2016 World Cup.
He's got that framed on his wall all day.
But like, you know, there's a couple of like Walcott's in there, but you know, he was in the England team by then, so like it wasn't kind of the
Walcott
madness
and
shout.
Rooney probably stick in.
No, Rooney's not there. No, he's retired by then. He's done. He's finished.
We've run a piece before, I think, on the Anfield Wrap about the Liverpool team that won the Youth Cup, and where they all are now, where they all ended up, and like it was all Atkinson, Stanley, lower league, jibbed football. You know what I mean? It's so hard to call when the kids.
What's yours?
Oh yes, I forgot we were asking questions. I'm kind of the opposite of Gareth in that, like, I'm thinking that people are going to fail rather than that they're going to succeed. So I'm looking for people to fail. So mine is Gary Mack.
Really? You thought Gary Mack
Why
was
we bought him?
Well, he's too old. Here's a fella who's literally the same age as my dad at that point, and I'm thinking, well, my dad's shit. my dad's not going to do a job for Liverpool. So who's this old fella we're getting in? And there we are.
And he was brilliant.
And the rest is history. And he was brilliant.
And he won us the UEFA Cup.
Yes, he did.
That's fabulous. I'm really pleased with that one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And he scored that free kick against Everton. We've got to mention that.
He scored the free kick against Everton. Well, yeah. I mean, we could do the full song. We've got to try it. He's got it all. He's got it all in his back pocket. I mean, this is in the context of everything that we've been discussing over the last couple of weeks about what to do with the squad, what to do with these players, and we had a long chat, didn't we, last week, John, me and you, about with Rob Gutman, and we were meant to get onto a bit more than we actually managed to do in the end. We just sort of ended up working through the strangeness and the little bits and pieces in the squad and how you can get yourself sort of. We managed to work out, I think, and I think all the stuff we've done on the Anfield Wrap, John, is the transfer committee stuff. You feel as though people are aware we could do with a left back, possibly two, some might argue. We could do with a quality centre midfielder, and we could do with more pace and quality in wide areas. I mean, that's broadly speaking where of all the shows that we've done, and as everyone's been talking about this summer, you'd say there's a consensus on that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's what, you know, most people would decide that the squad looks like it needs, because it's all about balance, isn't it? You know, you can go mad on footballers and try and collect as many great footballers as you can, but you know, it's a difficult thing to do when you've got limited resources. You know, we're not in the position that maybe a Man City or a Paris Saint-Germain where you can just buy footballers and then worry about what you're going to do with them after. You know, we're not kind of in that position really. So rather than just having a look out there and going, oh, he's great, get him in, you know, I think obviously what a club like Liverpool needs to do, you know, you've got money, with the ninth richest club in the world, you know, and there'll be money to spend there this summer, but you need to be looking at, okay, well, what's the squad actually missing? What's not there? And it does kind of feel, whatever you think about Albi Moreno, whether you think you should keep him or whether you think he's done in terms of his Liverpool career, you know, we are still short there, whichever. So you think, well, at left back, somebody can maybe be a bit more solid, whether he rotates or comes straight in. That is needed there. Centre midfield just looks like the balance isn't quite right there.
Looks a player light.
Yeah, it looks a player light, and looks like, and you saw what happened in the UEFA Cup final, and you know, although we're not going to be in Europe this season, you can sort of see it happening again in certain things. You say, well, just a player there with maybe a little bit more presence, a bit more legs, or someone who can run it. Just looks, the balance isn't quite right there at the moment. So then, as you say, in the attacking three, we've got some good players there, but it's a little bit shorter pace. And if he's not sure about Markovic, then maybe someone like that who can break the lines, and that's what I'd be looking for. If we're going to be looking to 4-2-3-1, who's the player who's going to be getting ahead of the striker? And you see, you know, Firmino gets in there, obviously. Coutinho's adding more goals. Lallana, you know, you could see more out. But the player who's going to do what Royce did at Anfield and just breaking the lines, and he's through. And that sells a player. So for me, I'm looking at the balance of the squad and kind of what we're missing rather than just going,
there's a lot of us playing number 10, isn't there, James?
Yeah, that's it. I think for me, in terms of midfield, I think it's about being specific. I think we've got a lot of players that don't do one thing really, really well, and you wouldn't be able to say to me, that's what Jordan Henderson's job is. Yeah. That's what Adam Lallana does. That's their one job. They do a lot of things good. They do a lot of things reasonably well, and they bomb about a bit, but they don't have a specific role. I think
a bit of brilliance.
Yeah, a bit of brilliant. He's brilliant at one thing. Right, let's get him in to do that. That's his job.
And then sort of the other fella makes more sense next to him then as well, doesn't it?
It's a jigsaw. We've got loads of players that they're a little bit mismatched. We need to, arrange them beautifully.
Well, this is where I read this morning on a site called statsbomb.com by a piece by a guy called Dustin Ward, Gareth, and it's his second part. He does a big Bundesliga review, and I like the piece. I mean, we talk a lot about stats and the use of stats in football. What's really good about Dustin's piece is you get the impression he's watching a lot of the Bundesliga. So he's actually talking as much about what he's seen, but then extrapolating it into what the stats then demonstrate. And StatsBomb, I think, is an interesting site. It's Triner and Ted Knutson, who co-owns the site. I think he's quite good in terms of trying to find a way to say, listen, these are just the stats. It doesn't mean X will not meet, therefore translate into Y. And I think you've got to be good.
To inform a conclusion rather than being one in itself.
So in this piece by Dustin Ward, he wrote this about Mohamed Dahoud, who I think everyone, Mahmoud Dahoud, sorry, who I think everyone is quite enthused about the idea of Liverpool player. Melissa Reddy told us that he's Klopp's first choice. And he wrote this: I enjoyed watching him this year, but the hype has probably outrun the current production here. I don't think he's ready to plug and play and immediately fix your team's midfield problems. He's writing a general piece. He moves all around the pitch, but doesn't rack up great numbers at any one thing. Looks to me like he left Xhaka alone to defend too often. His stamina and strength isn't quite there yet. Maybe when he adds those two things, he can develop into a full-blown star. But right now, he's still much more in the very promising category. And the key phrase here is, I don't think he's ready to plug and play and immediately fix your team's midfield problems. And when we buy a player, we sort of collectively, and certainly if Dahoud ends up coming to Liverpool for 25 million quid, which is the mooted amount of money it might take to get him, you can understand why, certainly in the era we've grown up in. Well, I expect for 25 million quid, I expect someone to plug and play and immediately fix our midfield problems, but maybe these days, 25 million quid's not going to get you that. And also, he's 20 years old. It's unfair on him. Yeah. So I think he comes in and just boxes everything off for us.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? It's almost, we've got the expectations of what we want Liverpool to do next season, where we expect them to be. We want to see them challenging for the league, challenge for cups, all the rest of it. And then it's, as a club that isn't in the Champions League, 9th richest, as John says, who can we actually tempt? Who are we able to go out in the market and get? And it seems to me that, one of the reasons for getting Klopp in is his track record of getting people in who are lesser known almost and then turning them into something else. So there's a bit of a gap between reality and expectation, I think, at the moment. And he's probably a demonstration of this in that, you can watch YouTube, and YouTube's great, everyone looks boss on there, because they only pick out the good bits. I watched it, and I thought, he looks a clever player, he looks like he's got a pass on him, looks like, he's got good vision. So all of those things you think, well, that sounds great for Liverpool's midfield, but as you say, 20, coming to a new league, new home, all the usual caveats, and it's like, it's going to be difficult for Liverpool, I think. I mean, I understand why everyone gets enthusiastic and does the fan thing where they say, well, what's the point if you don't say we can win the league? I'm behind that, because that, as a mindset, quite right. But also, I think there should be something in the back of your mind where you're thinking, we need to have a bit of patience with these lads. If this lad comes in, we need to give him a bit of time. Grujic is another one, isn't he? He's like a teenager. He's going to come in with a big price tag. He's highly rated and all the rest of it, but he's done it in another league, and now he's totally moving country as a teenager. New lifestyle, new football club, new teammates. You can't always expect them to hit the ground running.
There's a line there which Gareth says, James, which is, Klopp has bought players and turned them into better players, into players who fit what he wants. But that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't even happen in one pre-season. You know, any one of these lads.
We're not known for our patience.
Exactly, and that's the concern really, is that this lad comes in and then what happens is everyone's opinion splits on him one way or another. And that's not conducive to sort of getting behind the full 11 really. You know, the turning of this, it could take 3 months, it could take 6 months. To be honest, it's an entire career.
Absolutely.
You develop over a career, and at times we're prone to forget this.
It's about managing expectations. It's our expectations versus Jurgen Klopp's expectations. And you know, we're age. I mean, certainly on social media, and you know, I'm quite avid on that. And people want star names every day. They want a big name. They want someone who's ready-made, going to come in and do a job. And it's simply not going to happen. We're going to have to learn some patience, because we're not the Liverpool Football Club of old. We're not. We are going to get these young players, and we're going to turn them into, hopefully, superstars with Jurgen Klopp. That's our kind of mantra now. Certainly for the next couple of years, it's going to be players like this who aren't ready-made, aren't going to ready to plug and play. It's not going to happen.
I like that James says they're the Liverpool Football Club of old, but you look back through, and we're doing a history show at the moment on what we call history thread on 81, 82, and the big signings we're talking about when we're doing that come on and play a part. They've actually been at Liverpool for over 6 months. Mark Lawrenson was signed the season before. Craig Johnston was signed the season before. This idea that you come in, you settle, John, and then you get this. The senior players keep playing, and we find a way to bring you through. But you feel as though that's, for a variety of reasons, not least the way in which the reserves now are, that's become quite an unfashionable notion. But there's actually not that much wrong with it. You get to embed and absorb.
It's just harder to sell though to everyone. I think it's harder to sell to fans. You know, you're right when you point out these people are 20-25 million pounds. They're not 50 grand
and that's
anymore.
The going rate as well. That's that's what it is.
But when you pay that, I think fans will say, well, where's this fella we've just paid 25 for? They want to see it, and whether the players are going to accept it as well. You're trying to buy the hood. He's got a few other clubs looking after him. You're out the Champions League, so you're really trying to sell it, and then you're going to say to him, yeah, but we're not really going to play you for the first 3 months. And he's like, and his agent's going, well, hang on. Yeah. You know what I mean? My lad's a superstar. I want him in the team. You know what I mean? He's got his boot deals up in November, and we want, you know, stuff like no, it's right though, isn't it? It's stuff like that, and so it's trying to sell it to everyone that this guy's going to take a bit of time and come in, and he's going to be in and out of the team, but it's worth it. It is more difficult.
I think we've got a problem as well with Liverpool at the moment in terms of how many players at the club do we truly trust. You know, it's not like the Liverpool of old, as you say, James, where you would have a base of 6 or 7 that have played together for ages, that you know what they do, that you know what kind of results they can get, and you're just almost adding to that the way Liverpool used to when they won you know, league after league, which is now a long, long time ago. So, you know, it's like you could look at the squad, and everyone did in that transfer committee, and you can almost give fors and against for every single player. You can almost make an argument for getting rid of virtually every one of them in one way or another. And I think that's a problem for Liverpool as well, because, you know, it's not like you're bringing this fella in and saying, well, we're already decent enough. And okay, we got to 2 finals, but also we conceded a lot of goals, we finished 8th, blah, 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 blah. So he's not coming into a winning environment, is what I'm saying, and that adds to the pressure as well.
You've got to sell the project. That's how you get these young lads to sign up. Is to sell them the whole package, the project, be part of the revolution.
Yeah.
You know, look how adored some of our players are that have been here. You know, give us 3 or 4 seasons, you'll be held aloft and marched down, you know, Matthew Street after a match. It's that level of fervour around the players.
Lennon's bar convinces a lot of people of something, James.
There you go. But it's, you know, it's true. But that's
not getting me down there.
But that's how you sell it to them, that you're part of a project, because you know like you say, you know, we finish 8th. We've got no Champions League football. So what is it? What is it about us? What's the pull? What's the pull for these young players?
And the other thing that you've got to be careful of, John, as well, and it does happen, is that you sign. Is that certainly the way in which supporters talk? You end up with players that you champion because they've come in, and you know, and then what happens is that one player has sort of 3, 4, 5 bad games in 8, and you end up blaming the players around him, or he's not good enough, and all this sort of stuff. And that's it's a trap that seems to happen more and more now, because of the way in which supporters interact consistently on social media. It's not just, I mean, it used to happen when you were in the pub, but the point about being in the pub was you were only in the pub with these people twice a week around games, so you wouldn't see them any other time, and you could just ignore it. Whereas now, because there is this constant communication that goes on, people can sort of talk themselves into corners that X, Y, or Z becomes the missing piece of the puzzle, and then when he isn't, you blame the puzzle rather than just sort of saying, well, it might take a bit of time to fit the piece.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it, because that's why I'm glad you started with the question you did, which is when have you all been wrong? Because we all have, but there's people who just won't admit it. Like, it's easy if you know, you could say, well, if you say every player, we want him. If he's great, then you're right. If he's rubbish, you can just blame the manager. And that's what used to happen under Brendan Rodgers. Oh, the manager's not playing him right. He's not playing him in the right system. He's not using Balotelli well enough, or whatever, or whichever kind of player you want to say it was. And then it's easy, isn't it? And you might say, oh, it's just Twitter. It doesn't matter. But if that then goes into the ground, if that then transmits into the ground, and people have, rather than saying, well, I'm just going to support the 11 lads who were in the shirts. It's a Steve Graves quote. It's a brilliant one. Yeah. My favourites are the 11 players who were playing for Liverpool, and that's the way it should be. We've all got our favourites,
mine are the 11 wearing the shirts.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of how it should be. But if you're going in with the mindset of, well, I've actually fancied myself as a backroom manager and I've done great, so, and if only they did what I want, then we'd be fine. Then it does kind of like transcend into there, then, and it removes the idea of what we're supposed to be as football supporters, which is there to kind of get the most out of the lads on the team, and then go to the pub afterwards and be an expert like we all do, and say what he should have done, and moan about substituting in your Europa Cup final and stuff like that. But when you're there, it's got to be the case of, well, all right, let's see how they go, and let's cheer him, and rather than go, well, oh, he's doing my head in from minute one.
Social media isn't a pub conversation either. Social media, people can see what you're saying, including the players. Yeah. They're on social media. Yeah. So, like, Daniel Sturridge posts something about his faith, which he's quite entitled to do, and he gets a load of abuse underneath on Instagram. How do you think it makes him feel? It's not going to have him walking on air, is it? So, I don't think it's quite the same as and I think that comes into support as well. I mean, why do you want to hammer your own players on social media? It's not helping matters, and it does affect them as well. I mean, I'm sure they won't mind me mentioning because it was some time back now, but I remember Neil Jones from the Echo saying he did an interview with Jordan Henderson.
I was going to bring...
And he turned off the mic sort of thing at the end, and Jordan said to me, what the fans think of me? Because, I get the impression some aren't sure type of thing, and they had a bit of a chat around it, and, why wouldn't it affect you, the human beings?
I think Jordan Henderson's someone that really, the response on social media, on Twitter, to Jordan Henderson, it does go into the ground. It really does, and it's also now gone into the international as well. He's going to play for England. It's absurd. Jordan Henderson's not an international player. He's absolute fucking bobbins. No, he's not. He's actually a pretty good footballer by all accounts. He's fucking Liverpool captain. But because of this it started on Twitter. Yeah. How awful he is, and he's not. He can't even run properly. And that's transcended into the pitch.
And you're not allowed to change your mind.
No, that's it now. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. But it's like how a narrative develops around the player, isn't it? It's like it's the same with Heskey. If Heskey can play for England, so can I. No, you can't, mate.
But I mean, what are our problems? Because we were having the conversation, John, last week positionally. But I think there's a thing where we're a mess of contradictions. We get a ton of comebacks, but we concede too many leads ourselves. Yeah. We think we don't score enough goals, and there's a strong argument about the three who play behind the one that maybe they don't put it in the back of the net as much as you'd like. But then you're asking too much of them there, because Firmino and Coutinho's numbers are actually reasonably solid, and we're the second highest scorer since Christmas. Yeah, it doesn't quite. You don't quite feel that. You know what I mean? It's like knowing something as a fact, but also feeling it as an emotional truth. And then there's the idea that we haven't got enough pace in the side, but we're thinking about getting rid of our fastest player is Moreno, and he's if you were to say to anyone, if you want to pick one of that 11 that started against Sevilla, which one would you get shut of? I think most people, if we had to get rid of one, most people would say Moreno. So we're this mess of contradictions, really, aren't we? In terms of just because we're actually, are we quite good, or do we need major surgery? And it doesn't feel as though the season's a funny one, because it doesn't feel as though in the end a lot of these questions actually got properly answered. If we'd have just finished 8th, you could go, we'll get rid of 13 of them and start again. But we get to the two finals and we perform really well, and we have a strong second half of the season. If we'd have kicked on and come 4th or won the Europa League, you'd be able to say, well, we can get behind these lads and so on. It is this strange sort of, we're in a lot of halfway houses, I think, aren't we, John?
It looks to me like a squad that's been put together by a number of different people with different managers in mind, and it's just all a bit imbalanced. And I think, I think there's a lot of good players in there. There's a lot of talent, and then so that also becomes more difficult in a way, because they might have to make a couple of what might seem like tough decisions on a couple of players and say, well, look, I'm not saying he's a bad player, but do we really need him when we've got him and him to do the same, and we've got no one who does that? And I think that's the kind of the area with the squad, and it wouldn't surprise me to see, just with one or two of the right additions, suddenly other players look a lot better because they've got him. So you talk about the Dahoud thing, he had Xhaka next to him, and so that's what the guy who wrote the article was getting at, really, is like, well, is he, with Dahoud, does he look great partly because he's got this fella next to him who's just gone to Arsenal, who's doing everything that kind of he can't really, and so But then that's not to say that if we don't get the kind of right midfielder in ourselves, that would it be the Hood or would it be someone else, that suddenly you're getting 20% more from Emre Can. Suddenly Jordan Henderson think, oh great, I don't have to worry about that anymore. Watch me go now. Look at all the assists I get. You know, suddenly, you know, if there's a guy bombing down the right, you suddenly for Coutinho's like, boss, I'll just thread him. And then I've got Sturridge there as well. I've got options all over Sutton. So sometimes it's just about getting the right additions and the right balance to almost to fill what you haven't got, rather than worrying about kind of, well, what is it? Who's the brilliant player who's going to come in and transform us?
He's nailed that.
Hasn't he? Wow.
I had full discussion points written down there.
And he's literally listed everything. Yeah, I completely agree. We don't have an identity, I don't think. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel like we have an identity. I couldn't tell you what sort of team we have, what we do well at, what we do bad at. We just kind of, we're just sort of existing. And I know it's a cliche to say that you know, last season was just sort of one long pre-season, but it really felt like that with a couple of good moments. And I think we do need major surgery, and I think there's going to be some players that are going to be quite upset. I can see Jurgen, you know, genuinely buying almost straight up replacements for some of our players, and I think next season's going to be really, it's going to be interesting. But yeah, we need an identity. We need an identity.
Well, it's interesting that you basically touched on what partnerships there, haven't you?
Yeah.
And when I think about Liverpool now, I think, well, who links with who really well all the time? What's something there that you can really build on?
Well, I thought there was a run around Christmas where I felt Henderson and Can were beginning to build something, and Henderson's injuries kept getting in the way. But I felt like that, and that's one of the reasons why I'd like to see another quality midfielder brought in, is the idea that just so between the three of them, you're always playing two of those three and they can box it all off. You know what I mean? Because I thought I thought we looked a lot better, sort of across 90 minutes in games when the two of them were in together, and when Henderson, it felt as though Henderson was getting somewhere back to fitness. But apart from that, you don't know who Emre Can's midfield partner is.
No, and then it's like, you know, Moreno rightly has been hammered for the way he's played, but he's got Coutinho in front of him, and it's like, well, that's not great defensively from either of those players, is it? And that's not any kind of partnership. Whereas you go over the other side, Klein and Milner, that looks solid, but is that something that you go with next season? Do you really want Milner on the wing putting crosses in? He's a great crosser of the ball, but is that a sustainable thing to have for 38 games?
And you haven't seen Firmino build a partnership with any of the forwards. He played not with Origi, not with Benteke, not with Sturridge. He hasn't seen with any of them, has he, James?
Yeah, he's. I'll be honest. He's one that I'm still unsure about. I know he's a player of great quality. I know he has moments of absolute brilliance, but consistently for me, it's not quite there yet. And I don't know who he plays with. And I think there have been times last season where, you know, he hasn't played, and we've actually looked a little bit better, dare I say it. But I think you could say that about a lot of our players, to be honest.
Well, Firmino's got great numbers, hasn't he? He's involved in a lot of goals and that sort of thing. I think, you know, that's why there's a continual debate around them online and everything else. It's like, you know, look at the numbers and look at the numbers alone.
It's emotional though.
And
it's the you know.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a Liverpool thing again. Is that you're used to Dalglish and Rush. Even you mentioned them before, Heskey and Owen. You're sort of used to the idea that you're going to be able to go, and you actually struggle to go Firmino and X, and that feels a bit bad because he does actually do. You know, he's putting the ball in the back of the net. He had a great run after Christmas, but then you do wonder whether or not he actually wants to play up front and have someone else behind him. But then, for instance, you saw games where he played up front and nothing was sticking, nothing was working, nothing was spot on. But a lot of this, John, I wonder if we end up in a sort of a hunt for a perfection that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That, you know, that partially we're comparing these players to the Liverpool of the past, partially we're comparing these players to the Barcelona of the present, if you know what I mean, whereas the job is simply to win as many of 38 league games as possible.
What is it that we want?
To win the league.
Yeah.
I'll always help with that one.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. But out of our team, what is it that we want? Yeah, we want partnerships. We want this free flowing football. I can't even speak. Free flowing football. We want, you know, what do we want out of the team? I think we're quite vague as a fan base on what it is that we want. Even when we've had, you know, so we've had some wonderful performances in the last 12 months that haven't been incredibly well received. Maybe because we shipped a couple of goals. You know, what do we want?
We are a tough ask, aren't we? We are a tough ask. I mean, I when you're talking there, I'm thinking about the Houllier days, and I'm thinking, you know, Houllier by and large played quite successful football at Liverpool, but people moaned about the style. People moaned about it being defensive. People moaned about it not being entertaining at Anfield. and there is a what you want.
So
you know,
same with Rafa when we were battering everyone in Europe. They were only 1-0s and maybe a squeaky 2-1 or whatever, but we were beating everybody.
And do you remember as well when we did start tonking teams, it's nothing to do with Rafa.
Yeah.
Took the shackles off.
Yeah, took the shackles off.
The shackles.
Yeah, them shackles, yeah.
The Rafa shackles came off.
Yeah.
God, we are an awful fan base.
But luckily, we've got a manager. I think he's very, very clear about what he wants. And I think when you talk about, well, what do we want? I think what he wants is a clear idea of what the team should be doing and how people fit into that. And they don't necessarily all have to be superstars. And I think that's when you find I think he'll know exactly what this team's missing, and I think he'll have a very good idea about who there is out there who can fit it in. Now, obviously, the team around him need to go out there and get the players that he wants, and then he has to be right as well, because someone might not settle and blah blah blah, and it might not work out in certain instances. So it's not to say that kind of Klopp's perfect in terms of his vision and how he does it, but that's why I'm quite positive going into next year, because I think with Jurgen Klopp, we've got a manager who understands what you've said, that the search for perfection is unsustainable, especially for Liverpool Football Club, and he's sort of fine with that. But then, did we ever have that? And we're going to go on to talk about the John Barnes thing, but one thing he talked about is, he said when he played for Watford in England, you go to the train, and he said he'd be looking at a few of the Liverpool players and thinking, well, they're not that good. You know what I mean? They're good, but they're only as good as everyone else here. So why are Liverpool winning so many titles? And the reason was because they were the right players for Liverpool. And so it wasn't that Alan Kennedy or Phil Neal were the best fullbacks in the world. They were just very good fullbacks, but they also fitted into what Liverpool wanted the fullback to do. And I think that's how the club has maybe gone astray. You can't hark back to the old days all the time, but something that they did get right, and something that I think transforms to any era of football, is how do you want to play? Who are the players who can come in and play that way, rather than go, well, he's brilliant, we'll get him in, or who's not who's the best number 10 we've got, but we can get, but who's the number 10 who's going to play exactly how I want. And he might not be as fashionable as that guy, but he fits in more with what I want to do. And that's why I'm glad we've got the manager we've got at the moment, because I think he's the right person. Yeah, everyone else has got to do the job, and then the players have got to settle. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to win the league because we've got him, but I think we've got a better chance because of how kind of focused he is and how single-minded he is on who fits in. And so there might be a couple this season where all of us, including myself, will go, why's he brought him? His numbers don't look great to me. He's only played here, but I'm hoping that Jurgen's just got the clear idea of, no, I'm bringing him in because the team's short of this and he can do that. And then look at the other fellas go when he's doing that.
I think as John's developing the point there, Gareth, there's the hunt for perfection. It's not going to happen. And I think if you were to say to Jurgen Klopp, what are you after? He's after a Jurgen Klopp team, not a perfect team. And he would say, I think he would say that even the best possible Jurgen Klopp team would, in lots of different ways, be a long way from perfect, because the idea of the perfect team, firstly, you need the very best players in the world, but secondly, it might even, for the very best players in the world, still be a pipe dream. So I think that there is a bit of that, but, excuse me, I think it's getting that Jurgen Klopp team, getting those lads in, and then accepting that Jurgen Klopp team could come a bit in and out at times.
Yeah, because I've said this before, but I think Jurgen Klopp takes the Liverpool job because the Liverpool job suits Jurgen Klopp. All the caveats that we said earlier about where Liverpool are now in terms of world football and in terms of the Premier League, in terms of who they can buy and who they can't, I think all that suits Jurgen Klopp. I think he almost wants to manage an underdog. That he makes them better than the sum of the parts sort of thing. So that's what his football's about having this group, about this winning group, the winning mentality, the fans on board, about it being passionate football and all the rest of it. I don't think that necessarily works if he goes to Bayern Munich or if he goes to Real Madrid or whatever, and he's just given carte blanche to go and blow an absolute ton of money on the very best players. That's a different job. It may be a job that he aspires to in the future, but I think right now he thought that's the fit for me. And I've mentioned it before, but the biography that's out there about him, when you read through that and the jobs he's had, it feels that way. It feels that he selects jobs because he thinks that's a passion of football city. I want to go there. They'll enjoy my style of football. Everyone can get on the same page, and that's what's going to give us the edge.
Yeah. The idea of, as I say this, it's mining the seam of what he wants more than anything else. I think that's got to be the aim of the summer, is to end up, certainly to be able to feel by this time next season, the thing you said about identity, to feel as though you've got a side that's a cross between a classic Liverpool side and a Jurgen Klopp team. And I actually think there's a fair bit of crossover in those values, you know, in terms of winning the ball back, aggression, quality in key areas, discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's about trust. You know, we got to have faith in Klopp and what his methods and what he wants to do. And he, you know, I'm sure the first couple of seasons at Dortmund, it didn't go particularly great for him, did it? I think.
Yeah, it's the second full season. It really kicks on.
It's second full season.
Yeah.
So okay. So we've got time. We've got plenty of time. It's going to be fine. And you know, I've said on Twitter before. You know, just bring in loads of young Germans. Just fill the team with young, hungry Germans with great hair, and everything will be absolutely fine.
So you pleased with the goalkeeper then?
Yo, fuck. He's a dreamboat.
The goalkeeper shouldn't be allowed.
But he's the other thing that's interesting in that book is he's had a lot of setbacks before. You know, he's lost cup finals, he's lost out to promotion on the final day and things like that. Real heartbreaking moments. But, you know, moments as well, which the book seems to say that makes him kick on, makes him go right, makes him focused. And so hopefully that's what we get here. You know, he took that team that he inherited that far. No one expected 2 cup finals, and they were great. And it's not great that we lost them, obviously. But at the same time, you know, you can't just go, well, let's forget about Man United, let's forget about Man City, Chelsea, Dortmund, all those good performances. That shows, I think, what the manager can get out of a group of players. And so, you know, great. Let's see who we get in the summer, and can't wait to go again in August.
We're doing on the Anfield Wrap this week. We've got John Barnes week. We did an event with John at the weekend, and we got an interview with him, and that'll be coming out on Wednesday as the audio through the Tour Play subscription thing. There's also an hour-long Ankle Play show about John Barnes. That's coming out this week on the Anfield Wrap Player, and also on the website, theanfieldwrap.com. There's loads and loads of writing about John Barnes that's going to be knocking around different people's experiences. There's an interview Simon Hughes has done, a great piece by Mike Nevin. Tons and tons of John Barnes-related stuff this week on there. So do, if you get the opportunity, give that a chance, and also look to the Tour Player to subscribe. Lots and lots of other shows as well about transfers, about what Liverpool are up to. Our wild card show where people voted on what they wanted us to talk about, AFQ, and we're beginning to start our look at the Euros as well. So all that's to come this week on the Player. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do think about that. Coming back to John Barnes, who we interviewed at the weekend, John, it's firstly he's an intriguing speaker, and what was striking me as he was talking, both in our interview beforehand but also on stage, was the conversation around culture in football, but also that culture can only renew itself in a going forward way. He's quite adamant about that even when we were pushing him, sort of trying to get him to say he'd like to be more involved in some way in the football club. He was quite defensive on that notion, didn't really want to get there, but he was very much into the idea of that culture is almost absorbed by osmosis around a football club, as it arguably is in any organisation, that you have your behavioural tenets and then people just take them on board. They don't have to be written down everywhere. Everyone just builds it up and builds it up. And again, you feel as though that's something that sort of ebbed and flowed at Liverpool over the last few years. Yeah, it is. That was a huge question. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I was just thinking back to John Barnes talking about osmosis and how beautiful the whole thing was. But yeah, it was funny hearing him speaking. I expected him more to be of the kind of philosophy, if you like, or the opinion that I'll just kind of get more of the old guard in, really, so they could teach them. And he was quite interested. He said, well, it just won't work, you know what I mean? Suddenly you can't just get a couple of guys in from you can't just get a rush down and start telling people how it should be doing, and how everything should be running, because they'll be like, well, who's this fella suddenly coming in and trying to impose it. He says once it's gone, it's kind of gone, really, and you've got to find a new way. And I think that's kind of what he was getting at, really, is he found a new way that suits Liverpool and that helps people understand Liverpool, but it is kind of a new kind of culture, really, that now we've moved away from that one. It's very difficult to get back. But I think we've got a manager who's big on that, really. And the other thing the manager's big on is that you want to be here. You want to be here and work. If you don't want to be here, go somewhere else. And that was what John Barnes was adamant on. He was asked a question about Suarez, whether we should have worked harder to keep him, and he was like, no, if he wants to go, just go. He was brilliant for us, loved him when he was here, but it got to the point where, he'd been angling for a move for about 12 months, and what can he do when he gets to that stage? He's just kind of got to go. And I think Jurgen Klopp would agree with that. Jurgen lost a lot of players at Dortmund, and there weren't many that he seemed kind of too bothered about, really. He had a bit of cry with Kagawa, and that was lovely and stuff like that. But in terms of actually fighting to keep them, he seemed to be of the case of, well, if he wants to go, then he's not going to be the fellow who does everything I need him to on the pitch.
He's not going to be turning up to training and doing absolutely.
Yeah.
He's not going to be first in,
because
last to leave.
he needs his players so hungry, and because he's the kind of manager who's, you know, he's not going to be thinking, well, I'll keep him around because he's got that class to get something out of me in the final. You know, he hasn't got that luxury. The way he plays and the way he expects from his team, what he expects from his team is 100%. You know, putting everything into every training session. And so, if you've got kind of players you aren't sure, then I don't think that's going to work. And I think that's the culture that the Jurgen Klopp's bringing in, and why I think it's similar to what was always at Liverpool, really. You're lucky to be here. This is a great place to play your football. This is fantastic. You're humble. He talked about humility a lot, Barnesy, didn't he? So the greatest thing a human being can have is humility, and I thought that was a wonderful sentence as well. You know, you play for these people and you want to be in. And if you don't want to be here, all right, you go somewhere else and we'll go and get someone else in who will.
That's I mean, Coutinho's now the one this summer where everyone's saying we can't keep doing this. And I still don't understand why people say we can't keep doing this. And the one who, for me, even if Coutinho goes this summer, the one who, for me, will feel like the one who got away will always be Sterling. Not Suarez in a sense. Suarez was always, you felt, was going to move somewhere else. Was going to have that attraction abroad. Sterling still feels like it, and it now looks like it might have been 12 months too early and maybe just the wrong club. Maybe even longer than 12 months too early for him. You know, maybe the advisory information he was getting wasn't great. So, you know, we all love Coutinho. We all think Coutinho is great. But there is a thing there, isn't there, as John's saying? If you'd rather just have the quick fix, if you'd rather just be playing Champions League football tomorrow, if you'd rather, you know, and there's a thing here as well where I am a bit like, people keep saying, well, you know, if he wants to win trophies, well, he's just been in 2 finals, mate. He could have influenced events, and he's just scored in one of them, but I thought he was abject in the Europa League final. It's not an insult to him. Sometimes players don't play well. But, you know, there is this feeling of, well, if that's what you want to do, well, you probably do have to go then.
Absolutely. I wouldn't cry if he left, to be honest. I think he does a great job, but like you say, you know, he went missing in 2 cup finals, and if he wants to leave, you know, I'd let him leave. That's the thing, you know, going back to what John was saying, you know, the thing with the Jurgen Klopp team is it's not just the passion and the discipline and you know, wanting to stay late at training. You've got to be so physically fit, and you've got to work so hard. And I think as soon as your head's slightly turned, that you lose a bit of that.
Yeah.
And it'd be really interesting to see if we do keep him, what he's like in the next 12 months. If he has still got that, you know, he's there, he's everywhere, or whether he does sort of back off a little bit.
It's this. I mean, Suarez stays, and there's something in Suarez that means that, you know, if he was sitting in here right now with us and we were playing tiddlywinks, he'd be cheating and everything to ensure he beats us at tiddlywinks. I mean, so you're never gonna see that knock off. Yeah, that you're never gonna see that knock off on the pitch, and you get the impression it's the same around training. But there is something in this idea of you've got to want to play for Liverpool. You've got to want to do. You know, the most important thing I think in any job, you know, whether it's ours, whether it's what James does, is that you wake up in the morning, you remember you're choosing to be here. The idea that someone is being kept, you know, you can convince people to maybe not move or to do something a bit differently, but then every morning they've got to remember why you convinced them. If it comes to October and things haven't gone that great, and he's wondering why we bought this to Hood lads because he can't kick it sideways, his head's gone, and Coutinho's suddenly going, you know what, I don't want this. Well, he's not used to us then, and that's where I think it is about this idea of people choosing to be Liverpool players. Every day you opt into this thing, and you should think it's brilliant. Yeah. Every day.
Yeah, I mean, on the Suarez thing, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think Gerrard has put it out there since that, you know, he was in his ear saying, listen, you know, you could go to Arsenal, but what's the point? You know, why don't you hang on, have a belter of a season, and then you'll be able to get to Barca or Real Madrid or wherever you want to go. But, you know, don't leave us to go there, because why? It'd be interesting to see. I mean, I think there's loads of strands to the Coutinho thing. I mean, you know, there's the stuff Barnes was talking about where he was saying, you know, if they don't want to play for the club, then let them go, because ultimately Liverpool Football Club's bigger than any player, any manager. It'll still be here forever and a day, and they won't be. And he also, you know, he had a bit of a pop at the way we put players on a pedestal, and we made Torres feel fantastic, and he was bigger than the club, and he then wanted to go. I think Barnes admitted himself that you sort of can't get that back now. That is football's culture now, if you like, and this is where we are. But what I'm interested in now is what Klopp might do. I mean, people are talking about, you know, oh, well, Liverpool will be a selling club if Coutinho goes and all this sort of thing. I think Klopp's quite realistic about everything. You know, like John said, you know, Stars left Dortmund, and he didn't seem too upset about it. It was almost like, well, this is what happens because this is where we are in football, and what we've got to do now is get the next fella. And so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how our Coutinho pushes and how hard Klopp tries to persuade him not to go. It may be that he just says, if you want to go, then if you don't want to be part of my football, if you don't want to take us to a place, you know, you just want to arrive in that place, then it's not for you. It'd be interesting. I mean, it's all, like I say, there's so many strands to it, though, isn't it? Because it's like, you know, how much money will be on the table, what clubs are actually realistically offering a bid for him, and all the rest of it. We'll see.
But it's obviously not to say as well that you don't try and convince a player to stay. And I wouldn't want us to get into a situation where we say, well, as soon as a couple of bids come in and he's a bit unsure, you go, well, sod him, get him out. You know what I mean? You know, I think it is worth with any star player trying to convince them of where you're trying to get to.
And saying, this is the project.
Yeah,
this is where we see it in 2 years.
Buy into this ethos. Buy into what
And then if they're still determined to go, then I think you get to the point where you say, well, kind of what is the point in terms of... But I think with someone like Phil Coutinho, I think, you know, it might just be a case of, you know, he's just dumbing it out at the moment. He's feeling a bit down after the Europa League. He's got everyone saying he should be playing for Barcelona or whatever, and maybe he's just kind of a bit, unsure. And that's not to say that these people can't be convincing. That's not to say that there shouldn't be people at the football club who would just go, do you know what, this is a brilliant place for you to play football. This is where we're going. Or maybe whack your money up a little bit, and because we recognise your value to this club, and things can be done. You know, I'm sure to not just for Coutinho, but for any kind of top player really. And you know, I don't think it's just because we're saying that, you know, if he's determined to leave, he should. It's not the case of, you know, we're shoving people out the door just because, you know, there's a few links in a few newspapers.
I think that there's also something in the idea of being the place where you want to get... Coutinho now, it actually strikes me a little bit as like the Goethe thing, where you've got Goethe to... Coutinho goes from Inter Milan, he's had the big move, it's not worked for him, and then he comes back, and it might be, and I was always intrigued by the lower contract he took, John. I feel as though, you know, we might be doing something similar here with Goethe, where you get him in, he comes in, he becomes part of what we're about, and then you look to, it's perfectly natural that they are going to move on at some point. I just think if you're Coutinho, you can give us another couple of seasons.
We'll just always want that though, won't we? You know, it's like this thing with Suarez, just give us one more year, Sterling. Though. So you'll always just want the one more year. It's always going to hurt you when that player goes. So I think, you know, I think it just is one more season. I think with Coutinho, he's just got to decide what's kind of right for him really in his own career. And as Gareth says, the offers have got to be there because, you know, Barcelona can say all they want, so we quite fancy you, but unless they're going to come up with, you know, a big chunk of change, then, you know, it's you know, Liverpool aren't going to, you know, be accommodated to it, so it's that really. But the player needs to decide what's best for him, and I think he'll decide that he should be at Liverpool for at least the next year or two. I'm not too worried about it.
I think it's tactically interesting because it wouldn't surprise me if you were to sit down and say to Klopp, what's your perfect team look like? He'd go, well, there's a lad who plays up front and he's boss. Okay, that's great. There's two lads in midfield, one holds, one does a bit of both. There's then a player who floats around. I mean, I think you've seen this with his Dortmund side and even the Dortmund side that came to Anfield. And then there's two lads in wide areas and they're lightning. Yeah. And Coutinho's great. He's a really, really good player, but he's not lightning. And you do wonder at times whether or not, and you know, we mentioned before about the lack of pace, James. You do wonder at times whether or not there's something in. There might be a frustration, not just with Coutinho, but with Lallana, with Milner, if you are Jurgen Klopp, which is. We need more pace. If we're going to play the way in which I want to play with these with lads, and he said in this about 2 months ago, the most explicit thing he said about the summer transfers was we need wingers. He didn't say a winger. He said wingers. He said, you know, he goes out of his way to pluralise it. He knows what he's saying, and you do get the impression that, you know, no matter what happens with Coutinho, he might not be playing where he was playing last season, and Liverpool may well end up with that sort of pace in wide areas that allows, as John was saying before, someone like Coutinho to be able to pick the ball up, turn and thread passes, and you know, if you can't be perfect, be dead fast.
Yeah. but is it also a case of Klopp adapting his tactics and his mantra that he had at Dortmund to suit the Premier League? Is it the case that lightning fast players, all well and good, it's great in Germany. There's only a couple of decent sides in Germany, really, realistically. In over here in the Premier League, you know, you need big lads. You need lads that can do a job for you. Is it a case that it's him balancing his lightning quick wingers with some real solid centre halves?
Well, he's doing that, isn't he? I mean, he's already bought the keeper. He's bought Matip, who's massive.
Yeah, that's it.
He's bought Grujic, who's 6'1", 6'2". So I think he's doing that as well. I think he wants the solidity allied to, like you say, pace. And so I think
Hector's a big lad as well. He was looking after left back supposedly.
I mean, you say how explicit he was about wanting pace down the wing. He's also been very explicit about how disappointed he was by the amount of goals we were conceding from set pieces, corners and so on, and he's done something about that already. Yeah. I mean, this is what, if there's one thing that I think Klopp is, it's decisive. Again, if you read up on his history, I think he's not too bothered about who he's upsetting by doing certain things. You just go out and do it. And it's interesting as this summer goes on. I mean, the other aspect with Coutinho now is, I think, you know, you're getting these little rumours here and there. He's made the comment about cups. It'd be interesting to see how he performs in the Copa America and how that influences things as well. Because, I mean, I reckon if teams have looked at him in the past, he might go, well, he's obviously got ability, but he flopped that into Milan and he doesn't score enough goals. So he's now had this best return goal-wise. And so he's probably at the top of his value right now. If he does something in the Copa America as well, it goes up even further. And it might be that Liverpool go, rightly or wrongly, but as an overall strategy, they say, we got him in for, what was it, 8.5? And someone's offering 40, 45. Whenever they're going to get more, they might flip him.
I think as well, though, they'll be thinking about, if they are thinking of even contemplating selling him, which I'm not sure they will be, but they'll be thinking about, well, who can we get in? How many players can we get realistically, and what are their standards? And I think if we're talking about developing players, and if we're talking about getting lads who are in about 2021, and we think they're going to be superstars in 2-3 years, I think it's a bit easier to do that when you go for someone like Phil Coutinho around, who you know what you're going to get from him next season. And I think if we were maybe in the Champions League or whatever, yeah, you could say you wouldn't necessarily want to go then if we were in the Champions League. But if we were still looking to go, and I think they might take a different stance to it. They might say, okay, well, what can we get for that 40, 45 million, and who else is there? Now, if they're finding this summer that they're finding it a little bit harder to attract players than they thought, suddenly go to who they thought they were nailed on February, March, suddenly he's not looking like he's going to come. You know, they're looking around a little bit more, and agents who were thought Liverpool was great when we were in the Europa League final and there was all this buzz about Klopp, suddenly aren't sure now we're not in Europe at all. And if they're looking at it like that and thinking it's a bit more of a graft to get players in now this summer than we thought it was going to be, then maybe, okay, then replacing Coutinho as well becomes maybe just a little bit more than they're willing to do in a summer.
I think that's even intensified further, John, by a manager who knows exactly what he wants. You know what I mean? You said it all the way through. He's only going to buy what he wants. He's not going to compromise. So he's not going to go, well, we've sold X. I could do with getting something that's like Y. This fella's 75% like Y, but he's got something else as well. You do feel as though he's just going to say, no, I want the ones that I want. And if not, I'd rather make do amend with the lads I've currently got because I know them anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. And he's this is why I wouldn't expect huge amounts of outs. I think there might be one or two surprises, but I wouldn't expect too much because, like James said, there was one big long one pre-season, wasn't it? So to discard all the fellas who've been listening to you for 6-7 months, he's not necessarily got everything he wants out of them, but he'll probably think, okay, he's looking at a few lads. Adam Lallana, for example, I think he really likes Lallana, but I think he's probably aware of what he needs to do next in his career, and it's get into the box more maybe, and it's get more goals or whatever it is. And so, he's probably thinking, well, I've spent 6-7 months working with these lads. He's getting into the box more. He is doing this more, but I could do with kind of something else. I don't think he's going to kind of just discard it all and start again, really. So I think unless he is able to get exactly who he wants, I think he is the type of person to go, well, do you know what, that James Milner's not too bad. And I do quite like him, so I'll just play him down the right while we find this person who is what I need.
Okay then, just to sum this up as we move forward with this today, thank you very much for watching or listening to this, whichever way you've gone. I'm going to ask these a question in a second, which is to basically name the positions and how many players do you think are going to come in for Liverpool this summer, because I love putting people on the spot like that. We've been doing lots of transfer stuff recently, just have an overall sense of it, but now going forward it's going to be our regular gutter show, which rounds up sort of transfers every single day, and also the wrap-up as well. We'll be doing that, and if this is the first time you've watched us do anything, we do a lunchtime video, which is free for people who don't subscribe on YouTube, so you can, and through our Facebook, so you can see all that there as well. So they're the options for all that sort of stuff, and we'll be giving daily sort of transfer news off that. But this has been, these last couple of shows, and all the shows we've been doing recently have been the ones around which we've been talking transfers in more of an in-depth style than we ever really do. But because it's such a huge summer, I'm intrigued to get everyone's take and everyone's view on what's going to happen. So I will start with Gareth, and then it'll be James, and then it'll be John. How many players do you think he's going to? How many players do you think he's going to sign, and what positions do you think? And I'm talking first-team players, or first-team squad players. What positions do you think they're going to play on top of who's already come in?
So he's already signed 3.
He's already signed the goalkeeper. He's already Matip and Grujic. Grujic is a bit of a halfway house, but he's presumably going to give him games in centre midfield at some point.
I think possibly only maybe 2 more.
Really?
Yeah, I don't see us getting 6, 7, 8 because I almost don't see the point. A bit like what you just said, John, in terms of you work with all a lot of the current squad as well got committed to longer term deals and stuff like that. So I think he's addressed the keeper, he's addressed centre half. I think he'll get a left back if he can. I think centre mid, and then maybe the winger stroke striker. But I think that winger stroke striker won't be a gamble.
It'll be somebody.
It'll be a belter, and then I think if they can't get the belter, they don't get them. They leave it.
James, what do you think?
Left back. I think is a priority. I think he knows that now. So that'll be. I think that's the first to come in. A striker, definitely.
Think he'll have one more striker?
I think so. Yeah. I would. I absolutely would. Perhaps not a name. You know, it's a 21-year-old just on the verge, and give him, bring him on for the last 20 minutes of matches. And someone else to play in the middle of the park, but someone specific, someone with a specific job. Going back to what I was saying earlier, someone with a real job description. Stay there, do that. That's it for me.
Okay, John, how many do you think?
3 or 4 I'm going for. I think he'll definitely buy a left back. I think he'll definitely buy a central midfielder. So if we're saying he's going to play 4-2-3-1, he'll buy a left back. He'll play 1 to play in the 2, and then at least 1, maybe even 2 to play in the 3. I think, and I don't think he'll sign a striker. I think he'll stick with what he's got there. But I think, so I'm committed to 3. But I think if the right players are available, sort of similar to what Gareth said, I think he might do 4 there. He might do 2 in the 3. I've said too many numbers there. Did that get confusing?
We're all right. And those who are watching on telly can see you move your hands around as well.
2 in the 3, 1 in the 2.
Semaphore.
There you go. That's what you need.
What's the fella after racing called?
That's harsh. You're a harsh man, Gareth Roberts. Listen, huge thank you to Ed Hill for sorting this out for us. It's been absolutely fantastic. Huge thank you to James, to John, to Gareth for doing this. Really hope you've enjoyed listening to it. As ever, tell your mates. That's the Anfield Wrap.